On this, our Philippines-China focus will be focusing on South Korea, which is part of the Philippine-China region of Asia. And let me set the tone by playing a report from the Voice of America. And I choose the report from the Voice of America to highlight the fact that even the American media accepts the fact that South Koreans are protesting the deployment of the terminal high altitude area defense missiles in South Korea. Okay, let's listen to this Voice of America report.
Protesters came out in Seoul Wednesday against the presence of a U.S. missile defense system. Officials announced that key parts of the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, or THAAD system, are now being built.
The South Korean and United States military brought THAAD radar equipment into an agricultural area, trampling on protesters. The situation was so unbelievable to me, and so we are opposing the THAAD system for residents and for all people who wish for peace on the Korean Peninsula.
South Korea agreed to permit the U.S. military to build THAAD in 2016. The agreement was in response to the threat of missile launches by North Korea. Protesters want the system to be taken down. The presence of THAAD has angered North Korea, China, and Russia. They see the system's powerful radars as a security threat.
Now, the Voice of America report was designed for English learners, so you will note the way the report was read. But the big question is the THAAD, or Terminal High Altitude Area Defense Missiles, to protect South Korea? And our guest, Merci Llarinas Angeles, will be shedding light on this. But before I go to Merci, let me present again this material from the Peace Project of a South Korean expert explaining why they believe the THAAD missiles will not be protecting South Korea, but are there for other purposes. So let's listen to this. It's a 3-minute clip, and then the floor I will transfer to Merci Llarinas Angeles. Okay, let's listen and watch this.
Professor of Politics and International Studies, Jae Jung-seo, has expressed several arguments against THAAD as well.
THAAD actually would not work to defend South Korea, because this system is designed to work at higher altitude, higher than 45 kilometers. But most of North Korean missiles are short-range missiles that would fly below 45 kilometers. And so THAAD will be ineffective against most of North Korean short-range missiles. Furthermore, THAAD will be deployed if the plan proceeds in Seongju, which is south of Seoul. And since Seongju is far from Seoul, it would not be able to protect Seoul, the capital city, the most popular city. And so, even if that works, it would not. It would leave out those most populous and the most important politically and military place in South Korea. So, from the South Koreans' perspective, that just doesn't make sense. And so, both in Europe and Asia, the U.S. is deploying missile defense systems that would undermine Chinese deterrence capability and Russian deterrence capability. On top of the fact that missile defense will undermine North Korea's new deterrence capability. So overall, the U.S. is deploying missile defense systems around the Korean Peninsula, around East Asia and Europe in order to acquire a first strike capability against 1, North Korea, 2, China, 3, Russia.
THAAD is just one of many anti-missile systems of the United States. A recent report from the Missile Defense Agency in February 2017 has shown that of all the anti-missile tests, over 50% have failed. David Sanger from the New York Times reports, Mr. Obama concluded that the $300 billion spent since the Eisenhower era on traditional anti-missile systems, often compared to hitting a bullet with a bullet, failed the core purpose of protecting the continental United States. Flight tests and interceptors based in Alaska and California had an overall failure of 56%, under near-perfect conditions. One alternative to wasting money on anti-missile systems when dealing with North Korea is to engage with them through diplomacy. In fact, diplomacy has proven to work in the past. As this graph from Dr. Jae-Jung Seo shows, engaging with North Korea through talks has been very consistent.
We heard from the Korean expert the view that and the scientific technical explanations why the THAAD doesn't really seem to be intended for the defense of South Korea. If that is not the case, then what is it for? Well, that is why China and Russia and North Korea, of course, are more concerned about the offensive potential of the THAAD. And so behind the cover story of the Americans for the THAAD, we now see the real purposes for this. And let me ask Merci Llarinas Angeles, whose peace women partners have been campaigning against war in Asia, as well as the Stop the War Coalition, with which Merci is involved with also. And as a journalist, as a correspondent of the International Strategy Center and its World Current Report, she has written several articles, and I've been reading some of them. One is a Journey to Hiroshima and Nagasaki for World Peace, which starts with poetry, and it's quite a comprehensive article, as well as the Against All Odds, Celebrating Life and Peace in Jeju Islands. She has been there, and she has joined the marches in South Korea against the THAAD. Let me ask Merci first, her reaction to the expert view on the THAAD. What's your view? Is it really to protect South Korea, these missiles?
The construction of THAAD, first of all, since I'm more involved with the people on the ground, the Korean people, particularly the residents of Seongju, where the THAAD will be constructed, they are resisting the construction of THAAD because there has not been enough examination of the effectivity, the military and diplomatic cost, and the environmental impact to the people. So ever since the announcement of the construction of THAAD, there have been daily marches, daily protest actions by the people of Seongju, joined by other advocates from all over Korea, against the construction of the THAAD. Because as our expert said earlier in the video, the problem, why the Chinese are very upset about the construction of THAAD, is that because the missile interceptors are designed that can be switched to high range from 2,000 to 3,000 kilometers. So in effect, they can intercept missiles in Northeast Asia. And so this means that for the Chinese, it shows that these THAAD missiles will not really be for intercepting missiles from North Korea to Seoul, but rather from across Northeast Asia. And secondly, what they're saying that it is to protect Seoul against any attacks from North Korea. Since the missiles will be launched at high altitude, the missiles that THAAD can detect will be launched at high altitude. These are also not the missiles coming from North Korea. These will be missiles coming from outside, no? So to the Korean people, especially the residents of Cheongju and Seoul, they do not see that the THAAD is for the security of South Korea. At the same time, the cost will be tremendous, no? Because as we know, the American government has asked Korea to shoulder part
That's right.
of the construction of THAAD.
And that where that was occasioned by increase in opposition to the THAAD because it's an American project and they're asking the South Koreans to shoulder the cost. But let's get a bit of our personal background and involvement in all these things. You've been an anti-war activist. What motivates you? What's the inspiration?
Well, it's been a long journey from way back, resistance to the Marcos dictatorship and working with civil society, particularly the human rights groups and peace movements since after the post-EDSA. No? So, and especially now with what's happening not only in Asia but in the world, I think it's really our duty as peace-loving citizens to continue to be active, to work for peace.
And in particular, with regards to the South Korean anti-war and peace movement, how long have you been involved? When was your first trip there? How did the strategic, what's that group?
At
publishes
ISC.
current, the current World Current, recruit you to write for them?
Yes.
Give us a little background so our audience gets to know you personally.
Well, the Peace Women Partners was founded in 2005, and since then we have conducted 2 international conferences for women, peace, and security. And so we network with women from different countries, including Korea, South Korea, Japan, Australia, and many other countries. In 2015, I was invited to join the Grand March for Life and Peace in Jeju Island, where a naval base has been constructed for use not only by the South Korean Navy, but also for the American naval forces.
Which is more primary? Is it really for the South Korean Navy or the American forces?
With the current way that things are going on in South Korea, including the construction of THAAD, even against the will of the people, and the construction of the Jeju Naval Base against the will of the people also, the South Korean people themselves are questioning what is happening, that the sovereignty is in South Korea is being threatened by the impositions of the U.S. So maybe with this regard, I can also describe and show what I saw when I went to Jeju Island in 2015. Jeju Island is a special province in South Korea, known for its tourism. And from the slide, from the video that is being shown, we can see what has happened to the beauty in Ganjong Village, in particular, in Jeju Island. This is a UNESCO World Heritage, but since 2011, the beautiful rocks along the sea were blasted for the construction of a naval base, which, according to the South Korean government, they will be used for only South Korean ships. But in reality, it has been open to the entry of American warships. Construction, despite the opposition of the people, was finished in February 2016. And last I heard is June 2017, American Aegis destroyers have been docked in Jeju Island. What we are seeing in the video are some of the wildlife which are now being destroyed because of the construction of the naval base, which has destroyed not only the environment, but it's also disrupting the culture and the livelihood of the people of Ganjong Village in Jeju Island.
Would Jeju still be part of the World Heritage Sites with all these changes and concreting of all these areas?
The latest environmental reports that the Ganjong villagers have conducted show there's already a lot of environmental destruction, and this is a loss not only to Korea but to the whole world, because these are irreplaceable. So that is a very unfortunate event which is happening in South Korea, wherein the construction of this naval base and the THAAD, which according to South Korean analysts themselves are saying, reflect the crumbling of Korean democracy. And maybe I could quote some, because I would like to acknowledge, you have been mentioning the International Strategy Center based in Seoul. Actually, I got to know them, or maybe they got to know me after I wrote the article you showed about Jeju Island, because they asked me to write about my reflections. And what I can really say, maybe if we could show some more slides of Jeju Island. It was like being in paradise. So if you are there and you know that this paradise is being destroyed, as a citizen of the world, you will really feel the pain that the Ganjong villagers are feeling. That slide there, you see that every year the people of Ganjong village continue to hold their rituals. And even if the naval base has been constructed, they do not stop their dancing and their continuing celebration for life and peace. So they're continuing up to now.
I think you brought some videos about their rallies, and you were part of the rallies. Maybe if we had that queued already, but in the meantime, you go on with your. There, I think, are the videos that you prepared.
Yes, this is the video of the Grand March for Life and Peace. I would like to commend that the people of Jeju Island and Ganjong village in particular, how they have been reacting despite the strong oppression that they have been experiencing. You know, more than 600 imprisoned, arrested, cases against them by both the Samsung, which constructed the naval base, and the South Korean government. We can see the spirit of the Ganjong villagers. Yes, that was during the march. It's my honor to be part of this Grand March for Life and Peace, which they do every year around the last week of July. In fact, they're conducting another march soon, this July 2017. And I would really like to come back, because it shows, look at the faces of the children and the elders, you know, hand in hand. Even now that the naval base has been constructed, they still continue their peaceful protest, because they believe that the Korean government, if there is political will, can still stop the operation of the naval base. And that is also true with the people of Seongju, who are continuing to protest the operation of THAAD in their county.
Okay. And so there's the video there, and so you've had personal engagement in these protests, and what do the people say that despite their protests, the impositions continue to be coming their way?
As we can observe, the government of South Korea has been undergoing also challenges to their democracy since the ousting of their President Park Geun-hye, who became very unpopular with the people, and now there is a new president. But for the South Korean people, they want to see that their government is able to assert its democracy, and that it will not be controlled by the U.S. Because it's the U.S. who will be benefiting both from the THAAD and the naval base. No? Because as earlier explained also by the videos, it's the U.S. missile defense system globally which will benefit from having the access to the naval base in Jeju Island, and also the THAAD, which is able to intercept missiles from China. So these issues from the South Koreans, whom I have befriended and been in constant discussions, at least through email, Skype, and Facebook. They are concerned about what's happening to their country. They want to see that their country will be really free, especially from the U.S. domination, because there is also a visiting
forces agreement.
Yes, a visiting forces agreement, a
like
mutual.
in the Philippines, yeah.
Yes, and a mutual defense treaty between the Republic of China and the U.S. And this
between the Republic of Korea.
Sorry, yes.
Yeah.
So a Republic of Korea and the U.S. and it gives the U.S. the right to deploy armed forces to South Korea. There is no time limit. So the South Korean progressive thinkers are also questioning that they should be reviewed. The Mutual Defense Treaty should be reviewed, either for to be amended or maybe to be revoked, because this undermines the democracy of South Korea and invites possible escalation of conflicts with North Korea and China.
Yeah. What about the attitude of the South Koreans to the so-called threat from the North? What do you hear?
From the friends that I've met in South Korea, these are from personal conversations. When I talk to them, it's also the first time that I understood the feelings of many South Koreans about the separation from North Korea. Because it's like, you can imagine what happens if Mindanao suddenly becomes separated from the Philippines, and you cannot come there, you cannot talk to friends and relatives. That's how many South Koreans are feeling. They're wounded about the separation from North Korea. And so they want to be free to solve these issues among them as Korean people. And in fact, there's a good step now that the current Korean president, Moon Jae-in, has opened communications between them and North Korea. So I think we Filipinos and people from other countries, we should respect the right of the Korean people, North and South Korea, to resolve their issues. If they want to be one country, that is for them to resolve. And definitely it's not helping that there is intervention, very obvious military and political intervention from a country from across the globe. So the question I hear from South Koreans, and I guess not only South Koreans will ask, what are the Americans doing here in our country? Because if they're saying they want to protect us from North Korea, from China, but we can decide our own political and military path without intervention. That is the sympathy that I hear from many South Korean friends.
Well, so when will you be back in South Korea again to partake in these activities?
Well, actually, I would have wanted to join the march this year. But anyway, I hope by next year we could have a delegation from the Peace Women partners to visit and maybe stay for a longer time to visit the paradise of Jeju Island. I still think of it as a paradise even if destruction has been done. Because the paradise there, I think, is in the hearts of the people whom I have seen, who continue to their non-violent, peaceful, creative struggle, which is really a good example to the people, not only of South Korea, but also to the world. Yeah.
With the new administration now in South Korea, headed by President Moon Jae-in, and the feedback that I hear from you, that there is some positive response to the call for peaceful dialogue. What do you project down the road? Will things improve? In the visit of President Moon Jae-in to the U.S., it seems it's President Trump who's more aggressive against North Korea than President Moon Jae-in, who is President of South Korea.
Of course, President Moon Jae-in was brought to power by a momentum of successful struggles for change of the South Korean people. And I'm sure that he is aware of that. However, from also what I hear also from some South Korean thinkers, they are also aware that it's true that there is the U.S. has a capacity, a very strong capacity to persuade. And so there is, at this point, now, we could probably see a struggle between the push of the U.S. and also the desire of the South Korean people for true change, for strengthening their democracy. And this is a challenge for the South Korean people to continue, to continue their struggles, their peaceful struggles. So we really hope that the changes, like probably more democracy, we hope that it will happen. Although it is really true that the U.S. has been very active to push for the construction of THAAD, and now the naval base in Jeju is already operational. So these are very big challenges that the South Korean people are facing.
And for the Philippines, what do you think? One, are we getting the right information? Two, how do we bring more accurate information to the public mind here in the Philippines? What can the Philippines do to help improve the overall situation for peace in Asia? And of course in South Korea, in the Korean Peninsula.
Well, information, first of all, we are not getting enough information about THAAD.
And you're not given enough information to tell the people. So I'm happy we're able to give you some opportunity right now, and we will do so in the coming months. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, there are many things happening, not only in South Korea, but in the world, which are not being covered by our, call it mainstream media. That's why it's becoming the task of peace advocates like me, the Peace Women Partners, and Stop the War Coalition, to continue to give information about what's happening in the peace struggles, not only here in the Philippines, for example, in Mindanao, but as in South Korea and also in Japan and other countries. What I can say is that after I came from Jeju Island, I traveled to Mindanao, and I used some opportunities to meet with members of civil society, the peace groups in Mindanao, and I shared with them the situation in South Korea about the displacement of the people in Seongju for the construction of THAAD, and the displacement of the Ganjong villagers for the construction of the naval base. And it's also inspiring to see our own indigenous peoples feeling also for the struggle of the South Koreans, because we are one people, like there in that picture that's taken in Upi, Maguindanao, after we had our forum where I discussed the situation in Jeju. And mostly women in the group, it did not take long to discuss. No, they easily understood it. They easily felt for the struggle of the people of Jeju, because they said, we're also experiencing displacement here. We are being driven away by mining interests. Here in Mindanao, there are many like mining and other projects which they call as development aggression, which is also driving people away from their lands. So these issues about people being driven away either for business or for military interests are also common to us here in the Philippines. That is why we have many issues which we can share, not only with people of South Korea, but of course, since we are talking now about Seongju and Jeju, I can say that it's really good that the discussions, the dialogues are people to people, because then we can not only get informed, but also express solidarity for the support of other brothers and sisters in other parts of the world.
We've run out of time. What would your message be finally to our people and to the international community from the perspective of a peace activist?
With limited time, what I would like to say is that I cannot forget what the people in Ganjong village of Jeju Island are doing. The naval base has been constructed. Their waters are being poisoned. The Gurumbirak, which is very important to them, has been blasted, but they're continuing to dance. Now, what is the meaning of this? They are dancing, they are singing because there is hope. And now what comes to mind to me is that we here in the Philippines, we also need to sing and dance, to create our own songs and dances, and to be united to sing and dance with other people like the South Koreans and also the other peace-loving people of the world.
Thank you very much, and beautiful message. You heard from Miss Merci Llarinas Angeles, and we'll continue this in future episodes because there's much more to learn from the peace activists and the anti-war coalition. Thank you very much. Until our next episode.